the circumstances.
And so we're looking now to Secretary Hegseth. What were the orders? What did the chain of command say? And the New York Times is reporting, according to multiple U.S. officials, Secretary Hegseth approved a contingency plan that if a strike on a boat left any survivors, the military would attempt to rescue them should they appear helpless. However, the U.S. would kill them if they deemed them to still be conducting hostile actions. Wendy, how do you look at this? How clear-cut is it?
Anna, this is a very complicated, murky, and sort of messy situation. And I agree with both David and the general that we just don't have the comprehensive fact set that we yet need on which to form, I think, the fullest judgment. What I'll say is, look, exercising lethal power is the most serious thing a nation can do. And when that's done carelessly, and we don't yet quite know if it was done carelessly in this situation, but when it is, it damages the credibility and values of, that make United States power effective. So what do we know? We know there were 2 strikes ordered. The second strike reportedly, left 2 survivors, or the second strike, was launched against 2 survivors in the water. That's what makes this case so serious. What we don't know is what yet hasn't been released. We don't have access in a transparent way yet to the sensor data, to the battlefield assessments, to the real-time intelligence on which presumably a second strike would have been ordered. We don't have the legal opinions that Admiral Bradley apparently referenced and used if, in fact, as we're now hearing, it was him who ordered that second attack. What is troubling about all of this is exactly why we need this information. If it was 2 survivors in the water who were disabled and unable to, incapacitated, to say it differently, then clearly a strike against 2 harmless humans off the coast of Venezuela was an illegal act. If they are deemed, as we're hearing through press reports, Admiral Bradley will say to the Senate and House Armed Services Committee leadership and the Intel Committee leadership that they were legitimate targets. In other words, calling other boats in to help them out, continuing to somehow display the intent that they would continue trafficking these drugs, then they were legitimate targets. So I think right now I'm certainly trying to restrain a full judgment until we have the entire fact set in. But right now it's a troubling thing, and the facts to date, although they're incomplete, point to some potential deep failures of oversight and of process.
Guys, we're just getting some breaking news right now involving Secretary Hegseth as well, but a different story. The Inspector General of the Pentagon just dropped its report, was just made public, related to that Signal group chat scandal from several months ago. David, I know you're just now starting to get a look at this report. We had some early reporting about what was in it. What can you tell us?
The report is sort of matching our reporting yesterday, in that Secretary Hegseth was asked to sit down and be interviewed by the Inspector General's office. That's a normal thing by any Inspector General, any department. He declined to do that. There's also confirmation that he would not hand over his phone. I'm trying to look through more of this to get more details, but the concern here is that this was clearly a well-documented case where he sent classified information about these strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. There were other press reports about other instances where this happened, and the Inspector General wasn't able to do that because the Secretary declined to turn over his phone. So yesterday, Secretary Hegseth says, "Oh, this is all, I'm exonerated. This story's going away. Case closed, so to speak." I don't think that's true based on what I'm seeing, just the top lines in the report here.
Just part of the summary says, we determined that based on the content of the email, U.S. CENTCOM personnel classified the email consistent with the executive order. So they allege in their Inspector General investigation that Hegseth transmitted classified information. So when he says that didn't happen, that is not what the investigators found.
Yes, and that it was other military officials that sent him this information. It's secret, no foreign, that it should, obviously it's secret, but not distributed to any foreigners. Hegseth he has the power to declassify that information, but it just shows that everyone else in the military chain of command considered this secret information and very sensitive information, and therefore could put U.S. forces at risk. That's also what they include in the report. Hegseth apparently is arguing that he declassified it, that he made a call that he needed to declassify it to share it with these other officials on Signal. And that's the problem. Everyone else in the chain of command would not share this on Signal because it is classified information and it would endanger U.S. forces. He made the decision to send it. He claims he declassified this. Yesterday, Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat of Arizona, a former Navy officer, said he doesn't believe Hegseth's explanation, that he didn't really declassify it. He kind of made that up afterwards, and he does have the power to do that. So there's, again, just still many questions here in terms of this report.
Well, and it's not just about whether he spread classified information, but according to our reporting, he failed to preserve records. The Inspector General found that his actions, regardless of whether that information was classified or not, what was shared put military members and the operation at risk and put them in harm's way.
Absolutely. And then the key thing here is that this is absolutely secret information that should not have been sent on Signal. Hegseth's only defense is I declassified it and I have the power to do that. So this is information that would have endangered these pilots. Again, it was just as they were literally taking off, flying into Yemen. If this information had somehow been leaked, the Houthis would have known, and they have air defenses, where the American strikes were coming, and it even included the time the bombs were going to be released to hit these targets. So, it's really, these are very serious allegations.
Wendy, this report now on top of all the questions Hegseth's been facing regarding the boat strikes, what kind of position does this put the Pentagon in?
Well, not a good one. And I would just say, look, the watchdog is saying in really plain English, the secretary used the wrong tools on the wrong device for the most sensitive, even perhaps derivative classified information, which is classified information. And in doing so, he unnecessarily risked the lives of U.S. service members. When the watchdog or when an IG, who is not a political person, says that your actions put troops at risk, these are American families. These are our families. All of us know or have, family members who've either served or who currently are serving on behalf of each and every one of the 330 million Americans in this country. The right answer isn't a joke. As presumably Secretary Hegseth made a joke about Signal, the Signal episode recently at a forum at the end of November. This is about accountability. It's leadership 101, which General Clark certainly understands, whether you're running a platoon or a company or a country. And, I just kept thinking, Anna, the three defense secretaries that I served, if a junior officer did this on patrol in Iraq, on route patrol, for example, we'd call it a security breach and it'd be over. And it would have been done and said and exclaimed 5 minutes after, we would have found out about it. So when the Secretary of Defense does it with an air campaign, where he's releasing extremely sensitive operational details, like the timing of an operation, when our fighters are in the air, it's not a texting mistake. It's a serious lapse in operational judgment. I think Secretary Hegseth is a patriot. I don't think he necessarily wants to put our troops at risk, but his behavior is doing that. And he's a model for the rest of the men and women in uniform and undermining the security, not only of all of them, but of actually he himself when he served and was deployed.
The White House, after this report came out and was shared with lawmakers yesterday, stood by Hegseth, saying the president still has confidence in the Secretary of Defense. But I just want to underscore this IG report says Hegseth put operations and service members at risk. General Clark, can the Defense Secretary be trusted by the men and women who serve under him?
Well, I think that he's made a mistake with this. He did not follow protocol. Look, the time of an attack like this is absolutely sensitive data. If it had gone to the adversary, the adversary would have alerted his radars and air defense systems, put people in shelters and so forth. So, yes, it's sensitive data. It puts our pilots at risk if it got out. But the mistakes were, the people that were on that group didn't have a need to know. Secondly, there was somebody in the group who wasn't supposed to be part of the group. Okay, it was a mistake. Signal is not considered secure.
Right.
You have to assume, if you're the Secretary of Defense, that potential adversaries are monitoring every phone call. Maybe they can't break it easily. Depends on what priority they put on breaking.
He has secret ways to pass along that information, right? He's got a skiff. I understand that he is equipped with secret channels he could have used.
But the thing here, Anna, is the most important thing is you're setting the example for the men and women in uniform. So, okay, if you make a mistake, fess up, take responsibility, move on, don't repeat the same mistake. People make mistakes. Privates make mistakes, lieutenants, generals, and secretaries make mistakes. But the whole Pentagon system runs on the concept of honesty and integrity. So I hope there's a lesson learned out of this for everyone in the system.
So, David, have there been any changes to the way the Secretary operates that suggests the lessons have been learned from this?
Well, we don't know because the Pentagon instituted new press rules, which we've talked about, where essentially all the press corps was asked to sign statements saying we will only removed. So there is no access to the Pentagon for reporters who won't sign those agreements. So I don't know. And one other, again, detail here is that the signal settings on that Hegseth used auto-deleted a lot of these messages. And this gets into sort of the Presidential Records Act and it's just military records. So the Inspector General, they were all created after Watergate to look into abuse and waste and things like this. They used more of the screenshots that were of the text that were sent to the editor of The Atlantic. That was their primary source of information in terms of what was sent versus Hegseth's own records. Because, again, you know, and there's reports that this happened many times, but that basically there were these very significant, the highest levels of the U.S. government conversations happening on Signal, and then they were all being deleted. And that's just for the American public, for congressional oversight, you know, for history, that's a loss. We don't know what was in these conversations and what happened fully.
This report does flag that the Secretary declined to be interviewed for the evaluation as they were investigating, the Inspector General was investigating. He didn't turn over his phone to the Inspector General, we've been told. The Inspector General's report also, according to our reporting, says that they failed to, of the Pentagon, Hegseth specifically.
Muted her.
Wendy, how does that strike you? And how does that strike our international security partners? What are they thinking right now?
His reluctance, not to share his phone and not to participate in person for an interview suggests that something is off, that he just doesn't want to, for whatever set of reasons, come forward and say, here's what happened. Here's how I'm fixing it. Here are the new processes that have been updated, et cetera. I think what's so important in these circumstances and what anybody who, has spent any significant time in the defense space, military or civilian, really understands is that when there's some sort of issue, most Americans know that they don't expect their presidents or defense secretaries or whomever to be perfect, right? They expect seriousness, though. And this is a situation where, again, I don't know what his intent was. I don't know why he didn't show up, but it suggests just an unseriousness of approach. Not wanting to get to the bottom of it, not owning whatever mistakes happened, whether they were his to own or not, and leaves the rest of us wondering why he didn't. Instead of focusing in on, let's update processes and protocols that need to be updated so that not only the Secretary of Defense is modeling that behavior for the men and women in uniform, but so folks have a very clear sense that, mistakes can be overcome. You iterate, you learn, and you incorporate through after action reports those learned lessons, and you're better as a company, as a force, as a country moving forward.
Wendy Anderson, David Rode, Michael Schnell, General Wesley Clark, thank you all very much for that discussion and the breaking news. And joining us now to continue the conversation is Democratic Congressman Suhas Subramaniam of Virginia. He's a member of the Oversight and Ethics Committees. Congressman, lots to talk to you about today, but let's pick up where we just left off. You have seen this IG report. It confirms Hegseth shared classified information on Signal. I know you have called for him to resign. He put out a statement falsely claiming the report exonerates him, so it doesn't sound like he's planning to go anywhere. Could he be impeached over this? What does Congress do now with this report?
If anyone else in the military had done this, they would have been fired. And let's remember, it clearly says he put troops at risk, the men and women in uniform at risk. And the second thing, and something that that your team was alluding to before, I don't think this has been corrected. Like, I don't even know if they're still using Signal or not. That could be true because they did not cooperate with the IG in any way. He didn't hand over his phone. The DOD they recommended that the DOD put in place a program where they're checking whether everyone's doing this and checking whether this is being fixed. And they ignored that part. They didn't do a system-wide sort of assessment of trying to fix this problem. So for all we know, he could still be using Signal, and I think he probably is, to be honest. And so, again, the only reason we found out that he was doing this is because he accidentally added a journalist to the chat. And so we wouldn't know otherwise. And this is his specific personal device is an especially important target for adversaries. Wherever he goes and grabs coffee, his laptop. And so for him to use his personal device is especially dangerous to our men and women in uniform.
So is Congress prepared to take any action?
Yeah, well, I want him to come to my subcommittee. I'm the ranking member for Military and Foreign Affairs. I want him to come and testify on exactly what corrective measures have been taken, what he did do, and then I would like to see him turn over his phone. And then I would like him to be impeached, or else I want him to resign or be fired. Whatever it is, he is not fit to serve anymore. This shows it. What's happening in Venezuela shows it. And really, this entire year has shown that he was never qualified in the first place, and he shouldn't be serving as our Secretary of Defense.
His leadership has been questioned now by members of both parties, especially after the reporting on those boat strikes in the Caribbean. You're the ranking member of the Military and Foreign Affairs Oversight Subcommittee. We know your colleague Jim Himes said video of the attack was one of the most troubling things he's seen in his time in public service. What questions do you have for Admiral Bradley, and what are you going to do, or what are you going to ask your colleagues who have had a chance to talk to him?
Yeah, what's the real justification for this? The sort of company line right now is we're trying to get at drug trafficking, right? But then you've got the president going off script and saying he wants regime change. You have him threatening Maduro, right? I think what they really want is regime change, right? What they really want is to provoke a war with Venezuela, right? That's what the president is saying. That's what the indications from the White House are saying. And so they're kind of going off script and kind of hinting at what this is really about. And if the president wants to drag us into another forever war, the supposed, Nobel Peace Prize laureate and waiting, right? That's on him. But he needs to come clean with his real reasoning for bombing these boats. And if he really cared about drug trafficking, then he should seize what's on the boat, check what's there, what evidence is there, and also seize the people who can help you find more boats and more, supply chain. And so even if what they were going after is drugs and drug trafficking, they're completely inept at doing it.
Congressman, we are also tracking this breaking news of the pipe bomb arrest. What more are you hoping to learn from investigators about this?
I want to know why it's taken so long to identify the suspect and bring him into questioning. It looks like he's actually from Woodbridge, Virginia, which is close to my district. And it seems like this person was out there for, 4 years or more after doing this heinous crime and was not detained and arrested. And so why has it taken so long for law enforcement under both the Trump administration and the Biden administration to apprehend this individual?
Congressman Suhas Subramanian, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We know you have a busy day still ahead with all this breaking news. And when we come back, we'll have much more on that breaking news we were just discussing as we're learning more about the identity of the suspect now tied to pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC headquarters the night before the January 6th riot. More after.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the second time that this has come up towards the Secretary of Defense using the wrong inscription. As far as the attacks themselves, I don't know that the attacks are legal. I know this. Whenever you have a situation that has been drawn this far out of normalcy, then you must inflict abnormalcy to be able to get things back in focus.
To wait the agents out and came down after they left. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, who's leading the administration's immigration enforcement, was seen with dozens.
The fact of the matter is, the people that has allowed for this to occur on every level imaginable, as far as I'm concerned, public scrutiny or shame is not adequate. Those people should stand in front of a court in a hearing or a trial in being able to properly be reprimanded for allowing for the American people to get in this type of situation to begin with. Now, according to Joe Biden, his memento was finish the job. Well, if you're going to go after the adversary in the way that Donald Trump is going after the adversary, why would you want to halfway go after the adversary? If you know that these people are deliberately bringing this type of anguish into our lives, why would you want to share really and truly any type of mercy to your adversary? So that your adversary could come back? So your adversary could gain forces? You know, I've always been taught growing up around this area that you don't ever shoot at a bear just to be shooting at a bear. That if you're going to shoot a bear, you better shoot to kill the bear. Because if that bear finds out that you're the one who shot it, odds are he's going to come back for vengeance. And whenever he does, it's going to be twice as bad on you than it would have been if you'd have just left the bear alone to begin with. Now, there's no doubt we're in a squeeze. We're in a situation of damned if you do and damned if you don't, pertaining to all the drug activity that's coming over here to America, that once more, various administrations still has not given an account towards how come they have let this draw and get this far out of hand. Once more again, when you're dealing with abnormal situations, sometimes you have to deal with it in an abnormal way. I said from the very beginning, whenever Donald Trump was running for president on a second term, that it's going to get down and dirty. That these people are not going to back off. These people are not going to just elegantly go away. You're basically inflicting upon to their lifestyles, because this is how they make their money off of the black market. And I still say the only way of controlling it is to get a group of people together that can control all the currencies and change the currencies to another system to where we can monitor who's doing what in what country. That's the only way. Because the way that Donald Trump's trying to do it right now is just going to be an endless bloodbath on one level or another. There's going to be mistakes made. The general public's going to have different opinions about what's going on, depending upon their insight. And you got to look at the facts. The majority of the people, regardless whether they be Americans or whoever all over the planet, are selfish people, and they're more concerned about themselves than they are others. Now, if an honest mistake had been made, then a honest apology needs to be made. But if this guy is continually doing this, I think this is the second time that he's been pulled out on a red carpet about using unappropriate inscriptions and trying to transport his message across to other parties. I think this is the second time, and if this is the second time that he's done this, then maybe it does need to be reprimanded and changed in a proper form for the safety and the security of the American people, especially our American troops. Especially our American troops. But as of right now, with so much displacencies and so much irregularities and so much imbalances, I don't, unless this is done on a supernatural spiritual level, there's going to be pitfalls that we're going to have to deal with again and again and again. Because by and large, once you disable a person from no longer being a threat, by our American laws, we're supposed to show mercy. But now that's another thing. You got maritime law, you got national law, you got military law, you got American civilian law. You got so many different laws out there that they're contradicting to each other, depending upon who's telling the tale, depending upon who's trying to get their message across. So to me, this has been a total failure pertaining to going about not just the tariffs, not just the drug inducement, not just the illegal immigrants, but to me the whole thing's been an absolute chaotic mess. And like I said, we're only going to see more and more of this. Just like I said before Donald Trump became president, that it was going to require strong arm tactics that a lot of the American people was going to have to look at in a different way, in a different form. But you're still not beating the right horse at the right end. You're still not conducting reprimandment of those who have gotten us in this situation to begin with. And until I believe that is addressed properly, you're basically just spinning your wheels. I use the dog chasing its tail tactic. Basically, you're like a dog chasing after its tail. It's moving, but it ain't going nowhere. So it's really an unpleasant, very unpleasant, very unprofessional way of looking at this, especially based off of the original agreement of the Geneva agreements pertaining to humanitarianly trying to solve a problem. But what we need to understand is sometimes you can't solve a problem the way that you ordinarily would solving a problem.
Little teeny bites of data that the FBI analyzed to try to find who had done this. And you'll remember that in this investigation, the operating theory always was that whoever planted these devices likely was trying to create a diversion when a series of pro-Trump supporters were breaching the Capitol and marching up to it and breaking down the glass and the doors to get inside.
Sure he was.
And we don't know at this point what the motivation was. So we'll see if that theory plays out or not. Carol, thank you for your great reporting. We'll let you get right back to it. In the meantime, it looks like they may still be collecting evidence. These are live pictures we're seeing in Woodbridge, Virginia. I believe it's the suspect's home or property, or at least a property connected to the suspect, now identified by our team as 30-year-old Brian Cole. And I want to bring in former...
What the general public don't realize, by and large, maybe some of them do, is that we're dealing with cruel, evil individuals that has set out to want to bring harm and hurt, anguish to the American people. Regardless whether it be our own people trying to bring harm to the home front, are there foreigners that's over here? Are there foreigners at bay? We have a world right now that has become very, very dangerous. And we have seen this again and again on TV to the degree that in actuality it's escalating whenever it comes to seeing people wanting to bring harm and hurt to the American and the American land. We're going to have to become adjusted. I think, this is just my opinion, it's nothing legal. I think we're going to have to readjust our assessment in what we consider to be proper versus improper, which goes back to either legal or illegal. Now, whoever it was that come up with the theory that the pen was more mightier than the sword, I think set a sail to a society or humanity in ways that is unjustifiable whenever it comes to true justice. Because in some, and not some, but in a great deal of situations, if you don't exceed the power or if you don't exceed the violence pertaining to who is doing what they're doing as far as trying to bring harm and hurt to basically your average citizens, odds are you'll probably never do no good in capturing them, much less convicting them, much less seeing true justice as far as reprimanding them. Now, what type of reprimand do those people deserve? That will be for the courts to decide. That goes beyond my pay grade. But if the order was given to take them out, not to wound them, not to fracture them, not to basically injure them and slow them down, but if the order was to take them out, then those that was fulfilling that order done their jobs. And if you really get to thinking about it, unless you got boats that's right there at hand to be able to jerk them people out of the water, who knows, within a matter of minutes there could have been a swarm of sharks that could have grabbed a hold of them people. And in essence, by taking them out, you actually committed a humanitarian act of a mercy killing versus letting them bobble up and down in the water to the degree that now the shark's taking them out. If you're going to conduct an operation, you need to have a plan A, plan B, and plan C. And yes, it does need to be operated in and on in a proper professional form. Now we can see what a true tyrant does, like Putin, that blows up a school, blows up a hospital, blows up a daycare center, blows up civilian life, that has no intentions, I promise you, of going in there and sparing whoever's left that's been injured but is no longer considered a threat. Of course, you're dealing with an all-out and out war, which basically has a completely different set of rules about it than somebody like Donald Trump right now that's engaging in trying to stop drug activity from coming to America. Like I said, it's a very, very fine line to walk on pertaining to who was right, who was wrong, what's legal, what is illegal, pertaining to the tactics that are being used right now in trying to stop or protect the American people. But it goes back to the main objective regarding how come those that allowed for this to get in this type of shape for the past 30 plus years, 40 years or whatever, How come they haven't been properly reprimanded? Because I guarantee you, whatever money that they swindled from the system illegitimately, I guarantee you, had nobody went in there and offered to take none of their bank accounts away. I guarantee you, had none of them offered to take them out of their homes, their pleasant homes that they earned all their money in dereliction of duty to the American people. Had nobody offered to put boycotts on them and stop them in their tracks pertaining to reprimanding them. So if you're going to project this reprimanding act of justice, you need to make sure that you got all your ducks in a row, because we're dealing with abnormal, extreme situations right now. And sometimes, I'm not saying that this one was legal or illegal. What I am going to say is that sometimes you have to use abnormal tactics to defeat your abnormal enemy. And if you don't do that, you probably just will stay at home and don't even pull out your BB gun. There's all kinds of abnormalities that's happening right now to the degree that I've never seen. And really and truly, it's become frightful whenever it comes to our national security. It's become absolutely frightful.
And is it connected to any group?
Would you worry about evidence being destroyed? It's been so long that anything that he may have had from that day is just not there anymore?
Certainly, but at least historically, once the FBI gets into his computer and any of his devices, the FBI has a unique ability to find the history of it. People try to erase everything, and you can still get into quite a bit of that. So I'm confident the FBI evidence response team is going to find what's available, and that the FBI laboratory will be able to exploit that and really get anything that can corroborate things. But if he acted alone, if he was somehow self-radicalized, or he thought this was something he needed to do, that'll be difficult if he didn't have any other associates to really try to understand his motivation and what mobilized him towards violence.
Okay, thank you so much. Chris O'Leary, Laura Barone Lopez, and Christy Greenberg. We'll stay on top of that breaking news. Up next, RFK Jr.'s hand-picked vaccine skeptics are meeting today to decide which shots your kids and grandkids should get and when. Stay with us.
No one tells you that. No one tells you that right now, my body could be working towards 6 months from now, me waking up with a full beard and a man body, like a dad bod, right? No one tells you that that's all in the works, and you're cranky and you're irritable and you're not going to sleep for 8 years. No one tells you any of that. And there are medications for this, but again, you have to have the money and you have to find the right doctor in order to be able to get that care. Whereas if men went through menopause, there would be a vending machine in every break room across this country with Valium and Vicodin and Oxy and anything else you need to get through your day. And there'd be plunge.
Men do go through the change of life.
Or two while your body is on fire. We get like a chair in the ladies' room where we can go and sob quietly while we're at war with our bodies. We're expected to go through this like we are Navy SEALs on a secret mission, because you can't talk about it either. So yay for Halle Berry. I love this, and I would hope that women all across the country are up and...
Men may not go through menopause the way that women do, but men do go through a form of change of life to the degree that their bodies change. It's kind of like whenever you're going through puberty, your body changes from childhood to adulthood. Well, after you become so old, then your body starts reversing, because it's starting to shut itself down. You have different organs that's now starting to get weak or starting to die. And basically, men, psychologically speaking, as well as physically speaking, go through a form of menopause. It may not be as drastic as what the women go through, because what the women go through are more noticeable. But I promise you, when it comes to the change of life, There's just as many men out there that have suffered with their bodies, going to war with their own bodies, as almost it has been women. They may not admit it because of their ego, because of their pride, but it's true. And until we truly understand the anatomy of the body, regardless whether it's male or female, we're probably going to always stand around being bewildered and not knowing who to believe and what to believe. It's kind of like what Donald Trump's doing right now towards trying to stop it, or at least slow it down, the drug activity. At least he's putting out a message. Give him an E for effort. Though he may be doing it in an incorrect way with the military, at least he's putting forth an effort in trying to get the message out there to the world that we don't want bad people in America, and we don't want bad drugs circulating on our streets that's destroying our families and our neighborhoods. That's better than what a lot of them done. I mean, I remember whenever the Bushes, back after the Reagans supposedly went to war with drug lords, but in essence, it was only a show. It wasn't the real deal pertaining to actually rolling up their sleeves and getting blood on their hands. At least this administration is willing to get blood on their hands. At least this administration, I think, understands that it is no longer dealing with normalcy, and because of it, it's going to require abnormal tactics. I tried to explain that to my viewers before Donald Trump was ever voted in, that they may as well just get ready to start seeing some things that they abnormally don't see, just like whenever we see ICE come into a neighborhood and raid that neighborhood. These are abnormal tactics because we're living in abnormal times. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors, and may God have mercy on all of us, because I promise you, we're going to need it. We're going to need it. Shalom.